U.S. academia, where there is a significant attack on anything pro-Palestine, and there's an attack on people who aren't even pro-Palestine because they're deemed to not be, whatever, pro-genocide enough. And obviously, Harvard University has been ground zero in that conversation, and we are very, very happy to be joined here on the show once again by Amari Butler and Kojo Ashimapong, sorry I got that wrong, Kojo, organizers with the African and African American Resistance Organization at Harvard. Amari, Kojo, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Happy to be here.
Well, really happy to have you guys here, and I guess, well, I'll start with you, Amari, but I'm curious both your thoughts about this. You're there at Harvard. Claudine Gay has stepped down. She's resigned. She was the president of Harvard. Now, of course, she stepped down in the midst of this whole sort of plagiarism issue. Most people perceived it to not actually be about plagiarism, but about the congressional hearing where her appearance became very controversial. And, there's also sort of this other discourse around whether or not she was basically like a quote unquote affirmative action hire. So I guess it's a tough question to answer, but especially as, Black students on campus organizing around progressive issues. How are all these things colliding? Because on the one hand, you've got a president who didn't seem that supportive of Palestine, but on the other hand, you have this, obviously racist attack against her. Anyway, I'll stop editorializing. Amari, I'll start with you, but I'm curious both your thoughts about this.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, Eugene. I mean, it's very obvious that these attacks were never about plagiarism, never about Claudine Gay's academic integrity. And to be frank, I mean, the attacks on her were largely racist and anti-Black, and largely were part of a campaign by the ultra-right to kind of fight back against critical race theory or DEI initiatives, or just to completely rewrite the narrative of the United States and the history of the United States. This was largely just blatantly an anti-Black campaign in a white supremacist manner on Claudine Gay and on academia as a whole. And we definitely wholeheartedly, AFRO and just us as individuals, we wholeheartedly condemn the racism that are fueling these attacks and the anti-Black sentiment that is along with these attacks. I mean, just by all means, like, it's completely disgusting. It has been completely disgusting. And we know this considering the fact that we have been, as AFRO members, as Black organizers on campus, we have also been on the receiving end as a lot of these racist attacks. So we can sympathize with that, and we can sympathize with the anti-Blacks, with just how disgusting the anti-Black rhetoric has been throughout this entire campaign. But as you mentioned, there is another prong to it. And we acknowledged in a statement that AFRO released recently that, yes, a lot of these attacks are being fueled by anti-Blackness and by these ultra-right white supremacist attacks. But largely, the reason why Claudine Gay was forced to resign is not solely because she's Black and because she's a Black woman, because she's the first Black woman president of Harvard, but largely because of part of the Zionist ultra-right national campaign to kind of silence the pro-Palestine movement. I mean, Claudine Gay, we've seen, has been, in our experience, quite ruthless with us. But to the ultra-right and to these CEOs and to these Zionists all throughout the country and world, she didn't go far enough. I mean, during the congressional hearing, Congress people were asking her, why haven't you expelled the students, including Kojo and myself and the other students on campus and all throughout the country who have been advocating for Palestine, right? Like, and we can say, Kojo and I can say, we are both actually currently facing disciplinary hearings, but even that is not enough for these ultra-right and these Zionists, because they're scared of how big our movement has grown and really exploded in the last couple of months. And they really are ready to kind of throw down the hammer. And Claudine Gay, although she tried her best, it wasn't enough to even save her. So I'll start with that.
Did you want to add anything, Kojo, before?
Oh, yeah,
No?
yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
Amari got
you
it
wanted to add
completely
something.
right. No, exactly, yeah. And like, we understand that this is an institution, right? And the institution as a whole, the right wing is pressuring, and the institution as a whole is Zionist in their orientation, right? They have investments in Israeli apartheid. They have an interest in maintaining genocide of Palestinians. And so they're going to do whatever it takes in order to protect that, and in order to squash student resistance to that, and student organizing and student protests against that. And so, yeah, we understand it's the institution as a whole, and really the U.S. Rich and powerful, like Bill Ackman, who are fueling these attacks and trying to repress our movement.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to raise because I think there's so many things, like so many different angles, so many different elements that are brought together in this particular episode, or attack by these right-wing forces, combined with like Zionists, combined with the just people throwing their money around because of the privatization of education. I think that's a really interesting angle to this, is that this billionaire, Bill Ackman, really led this campaign, threw his money around to bully people. And if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't just at Harvard, but Harvard is where it was successful, probably because the president was a Black woman. Actually, no, there was another president, I can't,
Penn,
who
Penn.
ended up resigning. Thank you. So she's a white woman. I apologize. But the point is that this also speaks to the really corporate takeover and the big money takeover of higher education in the United States. So I'm just curious if you could speak a bit to that, because it's quite concerning. You also have these people like Bill Ackman and others saying, using their money and throwing around their influence to say, don't hire these students after they graduate.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
I don't even
start.
want to
I think no, I can start. It definitely is a pretty profound point. I think it's definitely nothing new. I mean, Harvard, even when it refers to itself in emails, it's not Harvard University. It's largely the Harvard Corporation. The Harvard Corporation is like the oldest business in American history, really. And these interests in the email they sent to us, kind of that I think that Claudine wrote, kind of announcing her resignation. She admitted it was through the consultation of the corporation, of the Harvard Corporation. And it's a bit ironic to me, actually. It's almost comical that Bill Ackman is kind of just being so accusatory and inflammatory towards ex-President Gay and the corporation, considering the fact that these are largely a lot of his coworkers. Like, they all represent kind of the same group of big money interests and whatnot, and now they're all kind of fighting against each other for not going far enough. And we know that the corporation in and of itself is Zionist as well and represents these Zionist interests, considering the fact that they have been kind of buckling down on us for the past couple of months. But we're kind of seeing kind of these different rifts even within the Zionist movement, where some are concerned that it's not going far enough and want it to go even farther. But I think at the end, it is very obvious that it's all kind of this big money, to your point, that it's really these corporate interests. And it's not a new phenomenon, because, I mean, as long as I've been here, it's always been the Harvard Corporation. But it's just interesting now to see kind of these different sects within there kind of trying to just go even further. So,
Yeah. And just like to briefly add on, like, I was literally talking with someone earlier today, and I was like, it feels like education is a side hustle for Harvard. Like, they have so many interests outside of like actually educating people, that, and like really their role is to maintain, I mean, part of it is to maintain US hegemony, right? And to maintain this white supremacist system. That's the role that higher education has played now, right? And maintaining the rich and powerful. And so they're going to do whatever it takes to do that. And so, yeah, at this point, education is not one of their priorities, to be honest.
I think that's a great point. I wish I could remember who said this, but someone said this a few years ago, that Ivy League schools now are just like hedge funds with a university attached. And I think there's a certain truth to that. And a lot of the major public universities are just big hospitals, with universities attached. But, on that note, and maybe Kojo, I'll start with you, but of course would be happy to hear it from both of you. It also speaks to something I think is important, because, these institutions, obviously, as you all pointed out very well, represent, the top 0.1%, like the richest of the corporate and financial elite, so on and so forth. And that's the thing that I find so interesting about the issue around DEI and how that's been raised. Because, I mean, it's like the way these Republicans talk about it, or these other right-wingers, you'd think Harvard was like the Black Panther Party or something like that. And that, they're pushing the most radical Black liberation agenda possible. And I was hoping you could just speak to that, because maybe this is not the case at Harvard, and if it's not, please tell me I'm wrong. But I find a lot of times at universities, at corporations, a lot of these sort of policies and procedures and this, that, and the third is really just designed to create enough cover to say you're doing something while maintaining a very significant, traditional, status quo that, to say the least, is not liberatory for Black people here in the United States.
Bro, you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, that's part of the reason why we even founded AFRO, right? Because we have an understanding that the university is not with us, even with all these initiatives, with all these policies. The university is not, for Black folks, right? Even because we come out of a swatting incident that took place, where 4 of our peers a all-black dorm of 4 of our peers was swatted by the police, Harvard police. That's really the origins of AFRO that happened spring semester 2023. And so you're completely right. People think that DEI is some sort of like liberatory policy somehow, but it's not at the end of the day. And a lot of the policy of the university, like you're saying, is a way to obfuscate and abstract, as a way to just like point to a certain position or a certain policy to say, oh yeah, work is being done. But we've sat in those meetings with DEI officers. We've sat in those meetings with admin. The admin's true purpose is to derail student organizing, and for students to go to that and use that as a tactic to not create change. To say, oh yeah, we're working on this. Oh yeah, we're gonna create this committee. We always talk about committees about this is the start of a conversation, right? All these things are just tactics to get away from like the material issues that we face on campus. And so I think that framing is absolutely correct, right? We produce our own change. Like the students at Harvard are gonna produce the actual change that we desire through organizing. But yeah.
I am also curious. I mean, and that's really important. I have been impressed with how active students have been, and I mean, you're up against so much too, and risking a lot. And it's not easy. I know it's not easy, especially when you've got these people, writing op-eds for like the Wall Street Journal, being like, "Don't hire my students." I mean, I can't remember. I think it was a Berkeley professor that did that when this genocide started. But I'm curious, for any students who are watching, who want to get involved. I actually know a couple who aren't at Harvard, but are at Ivy League institutions, and they just feel really isolated, and they don't know what to do, and they're scared for their futures, and they're scared someone might find out they're getting involved. What's your message to people like that who are watching this happen and feel really alone and aren't really sure where to start and are kind of scared of the repercussions based on what they've been seeing in media?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think that just generally in response to Claudine Gay's forced resignation, for a lot of students, and especially Black students largely, is kind of put them kind of in a moment of pessimism where they feel like, wow, like if they're doing this to Claudine, like, and they can recognize that Claudine Gay herself isn't even pro-Palestine, and they're doing this to her. Like, what does that mean for us? What does this mean for the movement? And I mean, it's very sad to see, and we kind of sympathize with that notion, obviously, just that the attacks on her have been really horrendous and racist. But we urge folks to consider that if now especially is a moment to have courage, and the moment to prove that it was never going to be one president or one individual or one person that was going to change the movement or really change the course of history. And historically, we've seen it's always the people, it's always the masses of people in our thousands and our millions and our billions that we make history and that we change the world. And right now, we definitely see a lot that could and can be changed about the world, and that necessitates a huge global movement. And that starts for students on our campuses largely. I mean, a lot of the biggest movements in world history and in US history especially have started on campuses just like ours. Harvard, other Ivy Leagues, and just other colleges all throughout the country, the biggest movements in the country have started there. And I think for me, that really has kind of inspired me to take this as a call to action and to feel optimism in this moment and hope that we the people make change. And I think for me, one framing that has really helped a lot is kind of to understand that the reason why we're facing all of this backlash and the reason why they're forced to kind of resort to these gross and disgusting scare tactics and intimidation campaigns is because we're doing our job. Like, we're making change, we're being loud, and that's getting to them. They're scared of us, essentially. And I think that we need to kind of take that as a testament that our organizing is working. But what we need more is further organization, and we get that from people not just mobilizing, but people continue to show up and joining the organization and continue to get involved on a deeper level. And we're seeing kind of a greater interest in that now, even with the kind of the repression that we've been facing and the increased repression efforts. And I think that means we just need to kind of double down on our organization. And now more than ever is the time to get involved. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, Amari and Kojo with the African and African American Resistance Organization at Harvard University, we really appreciate you coming and helping us sort through all this, giving us some of your time here on the Freedom Side.